Hello, my name is Maria Vizubova and you're at my channel Fertilizers Jazz. Here we talk about events, trends, technologies in the world of fertilizers and agriculture. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and let's jazz. Today I'm thrilled to host a very interesting guest, Prakash Kejriwal, Group Director and Board Member of Indorama Group. Indorama is a huge international conglomerate in business for more than 50 years, working in very diverse segments of chemical production, such as polymers, fibers and yarns, petrochemicals, medical gloves, and of course, fertilizers. Also, Indorama is a farmer in Uzbekistan, growing various crops, wheat and cotton. Company with a global reach, rooted from Asia, is one of the major actively growing players in the fertilizers industry. Thus, I'm extremely glad to explore view of one of the industry leaders upon global and regional challenges of fertilizers producers, as well as innovations and future of the industry. Prakash, I'm happy to welcome you at Fertilizers Jazz, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Maria.
Indorama Group has a very diverse portfolio of businesses, of course, but today I would like to focus on fertilizers side of it. And in fertilizers, Indorama is also very diverse, both in terms of geographical markets covered and in terms of products produced. So company operates productions in 3 continents, producing nitrogen, phosphate, complex, blended fertilizers, and even water solubles. So my first question to you, Prakash, having such a global reach, how would you evaluate global fertilizers demand this year in 2024? And what are the key challenges that you as a global producer see in terms of demand?
I think in terms of demand, the demand is going to be robust because the population keeps growing, the food security becomes more and more pertinent. So I don't see an issue with demand. What would basically happen is there will be generally shift of the supply, where the fertilizer is coming from and where it's going to. And given the recent geopolitical situation in various zones that we have, including some of the sea voyages which have been impacted, so as a result, what would happen? There'll be shift in trade flows, but the demand is going to be robust. That's the view that we have. So I don't think, and then going forward as well, the demand as far as fertilizer is concerned will keep growing, and that will be aligned with growth in population, that will be aligned with more need for food, and that will be aligned with the governments wanting to ensure food stability and food security.
I see. And how about some regional challenges, maybe, again, because of your global reach, you are present in many regions. Do you see any regional challenges right now in 2024 that you can name?
Yeah, so the regional challenges will be primarily on account of shift in the global trade. So when some of the markets for some of the producers become out of their reach because of lack of preference, of wanting to use a particular origin or not to use a particular origin. So essentially those materials will flow into different markets where they are more acceptable or where the users are not averse to using those origins. So which would mean that if those products move to a different markets, then in that sense, those markets and the producers in those markets will see more competition. And just to give an example, for example, if we see more products coming from Russia into Central Asian market, into markets around the region, because those products cannot go much in their traditional markets because of various geopolitical reasons, then essentially the producers in Central Asia will have more competition, from this product flowing into their region. So that's kind of shift in trade will have regional impacts, and that's how the market will then realign itself. But on overall basis, as I mentioned earlier, the demand will remain robust because food security continues to be very pertinent. Of course, depending upon how the commodity prices are behaving. And for now, for example, most of the commodities are in a low market cycle because compared to what it were a couple of years back. So obviously the farmers will see squeeze in the margins, and as a result of which they may apply less fertilizers per se, but that's something certainly would happen if the commodity prices are not aligned with the cost of farming. But to that extent, there will be certain adjustment. But on an overall basis, I do not see much of any drastic changes in demand per se.
I see. Thank you. Indorama is one of the very important players in the Indian market, obviously. And India, being the largest global importer of urea and phosphate fertilizers, is one of the key factors influencing, in general, global sentiments, both in nitrogen and phosphates. And during past 10 years, there were very many discussions around the strategy of self-sufficiency for India in terms of fertilizer supply. And indeed, so some of those forecasts came true. India increased its urea production by 9 million tons and DAP production more than 1.5 million tons. What is your view from inside? How quickly India is indeed moving towards self-sufficiency? And do you see that it might be a major factor influencing international trade flows in upcoming years, let's say 10 years, some long distance?
See, India is one region, one country, or if you look at the Indian subcontinent, that's one region where the population growth is still happening, and where the productivity is still very low. So, which means that even though while the Indian government is very committed towards self-sufficiency, and particularly for nitrogen fertilizers, which is potentially a easier way of achieving compared to phosphatic fertilizer, which is more challenging because of lack of any phosphate resource base in the country. And the government has already demonstrated the fact that out of 27 odd millions of urea that's currently required in the country, so they have bridged the gap significantly, in a sense that from where they were 5 years back to where they are now. And even today, India does import about 6-7 million tons of urea or similar nitrogen products. But I believe there are two things that would happen. One, the way India is looking to bridge the gap is by two potential methodology they're trying to adopt. One is government is very keen to see how some of the conventional urea can be replaced with nano urea. So with that, if that plan is successful, then naturally the overall urea in terms of N as it's consumed now will get reduced, because with nano urea, if the efficacy is good, the overall volume of urea or N in form of N required will be less. That's one way the government is looking at it. Second way the government is also looking to ensure is that how do they manage right optimized application of urea, because today, for example, for the given yield that India has, the actual application is relatively higher than what it should be, because the way urea is applied, urea is very volatile. I mean, you lose more into the air due to volatilization rather than what goes to the crop. So there are a lot more efforts being made in terms of educating the farmers to ensure that they apply urea in the right quantity at the right time in the right manner. So these two efforts would overall would help government, even though the actual consumption will go up because of more acreages coming in, because of high productivity linked applications and other things. But potentially the overall demand may not be as significant more than from where it is today. So if government keeps on doing this catch-up act of enhancing the domestic capacity further of urea production, combined with optimizing the urea application or nitrogen application, whether it's in form of nano urea or whether it's in form of conventional urea and other nitrogen products, then there's possibility that the government will be able to achieve that self-sufficiency goal. But it's going to take more time. It's not going to happen so quickly. I mean, setting up a new urea capacity typically is a 3 years gestation period. So and it's not easy to just set up another capacity. So obviously the government is very committed, but it's going to take more time. And don't forget that India is a net importer of gas, which is the main feedstock for nitrogen and ammonia. So it's going to take time. As far as phosphatic fertilizer is concerned, I think India is trying, and the government is trying to replace some of the imported capacity with more import of feedstocks, whether it's in form of rock phosphate, whether it's in form of ammonia, whether it's in form of phosphoric acid, and do the value addition in the country. I think to that extent, there'll be dynamic shift in the composition of the global trade flow with respect to phosphatic fertilizers. But on overall basis, the phosphatic fertilizer consumption in India still remains relatively lower. So I think there'll be an upside in terms of consumption, but there may be shift in terms of how the global trade flows, depending upon how much more capacities are created in India to replace imports of finished goods with imports of feedstock to make those finished goods in India.
Okay, I see. Thank you. You already touched on this, some, let's say, innovative fertilizers or special fertilizers. Indorama is very recently in Uzbekistan, in June of this year, very recently, has finalized the second stage of Kokand plant modernization. Which means actually that Indorama entered water-soluble segment, because in Kokand you will produce potassium sulfate, already started, and potassium nitrate capacity, as far as I understand, will be started soon. So what is your view in general upon water-soluble fertilizers segment perspectives, and why Indorama decided to enter this segment?
So here, the reason why we are looking at water-soluble fertilizer, because we see water-soluble fertilizer as an important component of overall fertilizer consumption. Now, with the challenges around availability of water and optimized use of water, and more farmers and countries adopting drip irrigation systems, soluble fertilizer becomes very, very pertinent. And we have a first-hand experience to this, because for example, in Uzbekistan, we are also a very large commercial farmer. We farm on 50,000 hectares of land. We farm wheat and cotton, and we have adopted, and we are growing that. We have adopted drip irrigation systems, and we are growing drip irrigation more and more each year. Because as you know, in Central Asia, water is crucial. Optimized use of water is important, and almost everything is irrigated. So we are trying to, and we are also trying to shift away from flood irrigation to drip irrigation. And at the same time, the country itself has adopted a program where they want to see water in a more optimized manner applied to the crops. And to this extent, there are a lot of incentives being given to the farmers to set up drip irrigations in terms of water tax, subsidies and electricity subsidies and all those things. So we are seeing that there's going to be a significant gradual shift into drip irrigation. And with drip irrigation, obviously, you need water-soluble fertilizers because most of the fertigation is done together with the irrigation. And so we are preparing ourselves in advance to meet the potential demand which is going to come from this. And apart from domestic and regional demands coming from this, we are also looking and targeting that how do we put water-soluble fertilizers, which are already a common use in many advanced countries, and be present in those markets. So like this, sulfate of potash plant we just commissioned earlier this year. We are not only targeting domestic market, but we are also putting those products into global markets. And we are realizing that our product acceptance is very positive. And so as a result of which, we are also looking at what other water-soluble fertilizers we can produce in Uzbekistan, for example, and all that based on what are the resource base which are available in the country, and how do we convert those resource base into high-value water-soluble fertilizers. And we, so that as a group, we are not only a commodity fertilizer producers, but we also become a specialized fertilizer producer, so that we have a complete basket of offerings that we can give to our partners worldwide.
Do you have any plans to produce some more water solubles, maybe elsewhere, apart from Uzbekistan?
So as of now, we don't have any immediate plans. I mean, I think first we would want to, and as you see, in Uzbekistan, we are creating small capacities to start with, because water soluble is a very specialized fertilizer and it has very specialized applications. So for us, we are looking to go through that learning curve in Uzbekistan with small capacities. And as we have more confidence, we'll explore what more can be done in Uzbekistan and what more can be done outside Uzbekistan. So it is going to be a gradual process.
I see. Water solubles actually are on the edge of commodity and specialty fertilizers, and the trend for specialties in general is already massive around the globe, obviously. On top of water solubles, there are two more types of specialties, stabilized nitrogen fertilizers and controlled release fertilizers, which are considered as key specialties. And I know that Indorama is producing controlled release fertilizer. It is neem-coated urea that you produce and sell in India. And we know that India is driving usage of coated fertilizers with regulations, not only with organic market growth. So how do you see the development of this segment of specialties, of controlled release fertilizers, not only in India, across the globe?
Sure. See, as far as India is concerned, it's more regulated, and hence, we are doing that. Now, as far as outside India is concerned, there's not a regulatory push as yet, but there's general understanding that there's a huge volatilization impact of fertilizers. If it doesn't have urea's ability, so obviously there is a lot of discussions around how urea could be different coatings, whether it's sulfur or anything else, or polymer coating or whatsoever, which would ensure that it's slow release, and so that, which means with the greenhouse impact of fertilizers are less. And as you see in Europe, for example, they are going to introduce CBAM. Now the CBAM essentially is one thing, but then if maybe there could be regulatory framework coming in Europe as well, because coated fertilizers, slow release fertilizers will have direct impact of lower greenhouse emission, then naturally it becomes the obvious choice. So I think this will follow the regulation. I think this is how it is, because and the farmers also will have to fully understand the benefit from it. Today, there's a cost of slow release fertilizers compared to conventional. So the farmers also, as farmers understand that, if, for example, farmers understand that a slow release fertilizer would require them to reduce their crop input by 20%, but that's only going to cost them 10% more, then they will obviously opt for slow release fertilizer. So it's a process of education, and it's going to take some time. But certainly, ultimately, it cannot come in through either without state support or without regulatory framework. So I think these two are very important elements to incentivize the farmers to switch away from conventional to slow release.
Yes, that's right. That's completely right. And talking about the regulations, you already mentioned CBAM. So indeed, Europe is in front of the major change of the playing field for both fertilizers and farmers, of course. When I talk to European producers, I always hear the view from them that, of course, lowering carbon footprint is necessary. However, regulation as it looks now will significantly influence European fertilizers producers' competitiveness. What is your view? Will CBAM help to make a global shift in the attitude in the fertilizers industry that you just mentioned, and how it might, in general, influence fertilizers affordability?
See, I think CBAM for now and for some time in the future will be more Eurocentric, because the cost of CBAM is very high, and I don't think farmers and ordinary farmers in emerging market, developing markets, or frontier economies would be able to afford that. So it's probably going to be Eurocentric for some time in the future. Yes, the impact of CBAM in Europe certainly would mean that European fertilizer producer will find it more challenging, and particularly, potentially a lot of ammonia capacities in Europe will find it challenging to continue, because that's going to be the key source of emissions, and potentially the front end from ammonia, whether the fertilizers which are downstream thereafter would be more dependent on imported ammonia, and Europe may see a shift first from gray ammonia to blue ammonia, and then from blue to green, because we should not forget that, while the cost differential between gray and blue may not be very significant, but the cost differential between gray and green is very significant. And the question is, today it's more significant than the CBAM tax. So obviously, whether the farmers are prepared to pay, because someone has to pay for it, because industry cannot afford to subsidize. So either the government will have to step forward, the regulation will have to step forward, or a combination of both in terms of support to the farmers by the government combined with regulation. So that's the only way it can work. So, but certainly, no doubt, Europe will see more ammonia being imported into the region rather than being produced, and there'll be value addition coming from imported ammonia. So, and there are European fertilizer producers who are already moving towards these directions. So they are slowly reducing their ammonia capacities, or they are shutting out their ammonia capacities, and the ports are getting more and more prepared to handle imported ammonia with more ammonia terminals and all that coming in. So I think that's going to be the impact. So you'll see more ammonia being imported into Europe, and at the same time, Europe may also see, as a result, more fertilizers coming into the country.
Yeah, and talking about this green or various colors of ammonia, does Indorama has any plans in this direction? Because now we hear almost, every month of some new projects somewhere across the globe. Do you have any plans for that?
So we are still watching how things are evolving. And because we don't want to rush, we want to understand fully, because an investment is a long-term commitment, and we don't want to make a bad investment. So for us, our teams are diligently understanding more about it, whether it's gray or green, whether it's blue or green, and certainly this is very much in our radar. And once we feel that the market is prepared to accept it and to pay for it, then that's when we'll say that it's the right time for us to invest into a capacity. Because, investing into a capacity while the market is not prepared to pay for it would be something not very detrimental to the investment decision. So that doesn't align with our investment framework. But we are very, very keen to see how we can actually potentially convert some of our existing capacities where we have gray ammonia into blue ammonia or green ammonia, or how best we can create new capacities. So, and we believe that today the cost of green ammonia, I think the capital cost should come down significantly. The operating cost should come down significantly, and the gap that we have today between gray and green ammonia should narrow down. Technology will do all this. There'll be improvement in technologies today. And to give you an analogy, if you compare what was the cost of solar installation 5 years back and what's the cost today, so you would see that today the solar installations can be done at 25% of the cost what it was more than 5 years back. So I think similar, and that's happened because of various technology improvements. There's continuous research and development, scale up of capacities on production, and all those things, and also scale up of demand. So all this will happen gradually, and when we see that they are right economics, we'll certainly venture into it.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prakash, for this discussion. It was very insightful, and I'm sure helpful for everyone who will listen and watch it. And I wish all the best to you. I wish all the best to Indorama. A very good year ahead. And thanks again, and see you somewhere sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. It was a pleasure. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. I will leave all credentials of Indorama and Prakash in the comments. Please let me know in the comments which questions you're interested to cover more with Prakash, and I will definitely do so. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, push the bell in order not to miss any updates, and see you soon.